Wendy had moved into her bedsit after the failure of her marriage. It really knocked her confidence, despite her being an independent, hard-working woman. It was a house made up of 9 small bedsits. She lived alone and worked at a local shop called Super Snaps. It was a place where, in the olden days, you could take your disposable cameras to have them processed. Wendy had worked her way up to the manager of the store and took great pride in making sure the shop ran smoothly. On the 22nd of June 1987, Wendy got up and ready for work as usual. She put on her coat and left her bedsit. Wendy walked to work. It wasn't far, as the shop was on Camden Road, not far from home. As she got to work, she took off her coat and started showing another girl what to do. Nothing stuck out as odd, and at 5 p.m, Wendy locked up the shop and started to make her way home. Wendy had things to do after work, so she first headed to the bank before leaving the bank to head home. Now, Wendy had laundry that needed cleaning, and she did not have a washing machine, so when she got home, she collected it all together in a bag. Wendy did feel safe in her bedsit. There was just one problem. The window at the back could not be locked because someone had painted over the lock, meaning that it was never secure. At the back, as you looked out of Wendy's bedsit, you saw the backyard, and beyond the backyard was an alleyway which any of the public could use. Wendy got her coat on to leave for the laundrette. After taking her clothes, Wendy spent the evening with her boyfriend. Now, her boyfriend lived with his mother still, so that evening the 3 of them chilled out and watched TV together before her boyfriend gave her a lift back home on his moped. He didn't like her walking alone in the dark and felt that she would be safer if he dropped her off. He would never be able to forgive himself if something happened walking home. Wendy hopped off the moped, gave her boyfriend a kiss goodbye before she used her keys to unlock the door and enter the flat. But Wendy had no idea what was waiting on the other side of the door. As Wendy entered her flat, she was overpowered by a man who possibly entered through that unsecured window. Had he been lying in wait for her? Wendy was SA'd. She was attacked over the head by a large blunt object, and she had compression to the neck. Of course, people soon wondered where Wendy was when she did not show up to work. She did not reply to her boyfriend or her family's calls, resulting in her being found lifeless on the bed in her bedsit. Wendy's father had the awful task of identifying her remains as she lay covered by a white sheet, her head poking out from it. He could see the bruising that she had sustained on her face. Police swarmed the building, taping it off. No one in, no one out. Every resident of the building needed to be accounted for. Statements were taken and forensics dusted for clues. Of course, in 1987, forensics did not have the technology or the DNA opportunities that they do today. But they still retrieved whatever they could from the victim and the bedsit, preserving what they could and testing anything that they thought was of interest. Soon police realised that the point of entry must have been through the unsecured window, and also wondered if whoever had done this had watched Wendy for some time and had planned this. The theory was that the man had lied in wait for her in the bedsit, in the dark, ready to overpower her. At first, Wendy's boyfriend was a suspect, but they soon realised that he had nothing to do with this. Police searched the cemetery that was on the other side of the alleyway to Wendy's flat. They were there looking for possibly objects that were used in the attack or anything that he may have dropped as he ran away. As police were dealing with this terrible crime, the concern was that if they did not catch him soon, would he attack again? Their fears were about to become true. Not far away, another lady who lived alone was about to become this man's second victim. Caroline Pierce was described as a lovely, bright, caring, compassionate girl. She worked as a manageress at a restaurant called Brown's, and just like Wendy, Caroline's place of work was also on the Camden Road in Tunbridge Wells. After work, Caroline had spent the night out with friends. The group were catching up, drinking, dancing and having fun. But at the end of the night, Caroline ordered a taxi. She didn't want to walk home in the dark, so the taxi took her straight to the door. The fare was £1.30. Caroline paid the driver before hopping out of the car and back to the flat. But not long after this, and before Caroline could put the key in the lock, a man who seemed to come from nowhere grabbed Caroline from behind, placing his hand over her mouth to stop her screaming, and dragged her away from the flat and onto some waste ground next to the property, some of which was also a cemetery. Caroline tried to scream. Neighbours later said that they did hear screams, but when they looked out the windows, they could not see anyone or anything going on. Caroline lay lifeless in a drainage ditch after being attacked by this man. Her body lay there until found some 3 weeks later. Caroline had been found 40 miles away in Romney Marsh, a long way from where she'd been taken from. Police believe this man may have links to both areas. She was found naked, apart from her tights. And like Wendy, Caroline had been attacked around the head with a blunt object. She'd also been essayed and had compression to the neck. Police now felt that they had a serial offender on the loose, and they were worried that anyone else meet the same fate unless this man was quickly arrested. Following the discovery of Caroline's body, police started a huge investigation, one of the largest Kent had ever seen. This went on for many months. Police and forensics had done as much as they could by now with the tools that they had at the time, so they scaled down the inquiry, although they insisted that the case was very much still open. The families of these two beautiful girls prayed and hoped that they would receive the call one day to say that he had been caught, and then they could celebrate. They tortured themselves with questions such as why, and what did they do so bad to deserve this? But as we know, these questions, sometimes we never get the answers, and the answers we do get are not what we expect or want to hear. As the years tick by and DNA technology, which was once a thing of the past, was now made available to the lab, scientists were able to finally retrieve a DNA profile of the perpetrator. Now armed with this profile, a detective came out of retirement to help with the case, and soon they drew up a strategy to try and eventually catch this man. On a white shirt found on the floor of Wendy's bedsit, police had found a footprint in red bodily fluid. This was a match to a make of shoe called Clark's. At the time, this was a very rare shoe, and they believed it would belonged to the man responsible. The next thing they had was the sighting of a blue-grey Talbot Horizon car, which was apparently seen parked outside of Wendy's flat. Her boyfriend had also seen it parked outside when he dropped her off that night. The driver of the car was apparently having much of a job trying to start it before he left. The other strange thing was a young 19-year-old girl which lived in the same street, reported a strange occurrence. She had opened her door only a few days before Wendy's life was taken. As a man knocked on the door, he said, "You really shouldn't leave your window open," before he walked away. She helped police put together an e-fit of this man. The other interesting fact of this case was that Wendy and Caroline's keys were never recovered. It was as if they'd been taken for some kind of trophy. Police arranged for mock-up key rings to be made of both sets of keys, or what they would look like. Police hoped that a member of the public might call in with a name, a family member or friend, someone that they knew that might have been taking a keen interest in the cases, maybe someone who'd been acting oddly around the time of both cases, or someone who may have been missing late from home on those particular nights. Taking this case to the BBC for Crime Watch, so that they could carry out a reconstruction of both cases consecutively, hoping to jog people's memories. By 2019, forensic experts had developed new techniques for collecting DNA from a damaged sperm cell, like that on Caroline's tights. To this, they applied another relatively new technique, familial DNA, which allows scientists to identify whether someone is related to a person whose DNA is recovered at the scene. This was absolutely crucial to this case. The DNA samples taken from the scene would have remained unidentified, but familial DNA allowed the investigators to bring down the profiles on the national database to a workable number. Officers then looked at the list where he lived around the time of the murders, who would be in the right age frame. The closest partial DNA match was from a sibling of a man named David Fuller. Police studied their family tree and honed in on one relative, this David Fuller. Now, he was born in the 1950s and trained as an electrician and maintenance man while working in the Navy shipyards of Portsmouth. At school, he was in trouble by the police on a regular basis for stealing bikes and damaging property. And in the 70s, he committed a string of what police called creeper burglaries. In 2020, David Fuller was living with his third wife and teenage son in Heathfield, West Sussex. He was interested in bird watching, cycling, live music, and photography. But then on the 3rd of December 2020, police suddenly arrived at the quiet estate where he lived. They knocked on the door of the family's small semi-detached property, noted the well-equipped CCTV cameras in place.
Morning. David, it's the police. Coming to speak to you. Oh, yes, come. You here alone? No. David, if you listen to what I'm going to say.
Yes. Right, David, you're under arrest on suspicion of the murders of Wendy Knell and Caroline Pierce in 1987.
When questioned, David Fuller claimed that he did not know Tunbridge Wells well at all, despite the fact that it was the next major town to where he lived. He also told how he had not visited the Super Snap shop where Wendy worked, or the Buster Brown's restaurant where Caroline worked, and was certainly not involved in the two cases. But as police searched his home, they discovered all sorts. David Fuller kept piles of old computers, hard drives, discs, phones, and 34,000 printed photographs. I wonder where he got those printed. He obsessively recorded his life by photographs. He had invoices for maintenance and electrical work, diaries detailing nights out at restaurants, photos showing rides with the cycling club, and police discovered the invoices for work around Tunbridge Wells. The diaries showed he had regularly been to Buster Brown's restaurant. The cycling club members reached to the back of their memories and described routes that they had followed through Romney Marsh, where Caroline had been discovered. He had actually lived on the same road as Wendy in the 70s and 80s before Wendy moved in. One of the photographs showed David Fuller lying on his stomach on a sunny day wearing shorts in the 80s, his feet upturned, the soles of his Clark shoes exposed. The pattern matched the print found in Wendy's flat, and a fingerprint partially matched a bloody fingerprint found on a shopping bag. The case became overwhelming when a DNA sample taken from David Fuller matched DNA in the semen collected decades earlier from Caroline's thighs. But that was not all they found, and the investigation was not over. It was about to take an even more disturbing turn. At David's house, experts were grappling with computer hardware hoarded since the 80s, including hundreds of hard drives and memory cards, 2,200 obsolete storage disks. He had 30 mobile phones and SIM cards, and then they examined the cupboard, which inside had a cabinet. And as they pulled that away from the wall and screwed to the back, there was a holder, a concealed hide containing 4 hard drives. And on these hard drives were videos apparently filmed by David Fuller, and inside a hospital mortuary where he worked. The detectives started going through them. They watched the videos that became more sickening as they watched. David Fuller had worked as a mortuary technician and odd job man. He had been essaying the bodies of dead people. It was terrible. As much as police and the families were pleased that someone had been arrested for these 2 cases, now random families all over the area were finding out that their loved ones, who should have been safe and afforded dignity in death, had suffered at the hands of David Fuller at the hospitals where he worked. David Fuller had an all-access area swipe card to the hospital, and the mortuary was an area he visited regularly, especially at night when it was quiet and there was no one around. At the newer hospital, the fridges were used to store the bodies had doors at each end. One end it's covered by CCTV cameras, but the other, where the examinations usually take place, had no cameras, and David Fuller seemed to have known this. Police found no footage from the hospital of what he was doing, but his own videos filmed on a small camera were damning. Investigators watched and were able to pause them as they read out details on patients' wristbands as he filmed himself doing this to them. They cross-referenced metadata on the videos, which showed the dates that they were filmed and the names of the patients in the mortuary at the time. David Fuller had even kept a little black book containing the names of his victims. It's said that with these films they were able to say that he went back to particular victims on different occasions. One officer stated, "This is the most disturbing and challenging case I have ever been involved in." The police counting 100 victims whose ages range between 18 and over 85. David Fuller also had one of the biggest stashes of SA child images ever discovered by police. NHS sources said at the time that colleagues saw David Fuller as helpful, as the guy that would change a bulb, fix a fuse, always with a smile. But David Fuller is known to have been essaying the deceased between 2008 and 2020. In 2007, Wendy Nell's father, Bill, told the BBC, "One day, someone's going to ring my doorbell and tell me that they've caught him, and then we'll be able to celebrate." That day has come, but sadly, Bill Nell died in 2017 and not lived to see it. It is found that David Fuller regularly worked beyond his contracted hours and undertook tasks that were unnecessary. He was sentenced in court to life imprisonment with a whole life order on the 15th of December 2021, meaning that he will serve his life sentence without the possibility of parole. In October 2021, David Fuller was charged with an additional 16 offences committed at mortuaries in the now closed Kent and Sussex Hospital and its successor, the Tunbridge Wells Hospital at Pembury, between 2007 and 2020. He pleaded guilty to the charges on the 3rd of November 2022. He is imprisoned at HMP Frankland alongside other prisoners such as Wayne Couzens and Michael Stone. Thank you for watching, guys. Let me know what you think about this case in the comment section below.